that Matthew Tkachuk signing is unbelievable. He gets a $9.5 million a year contract, signs an 8-year extension. So he's going to be in the Atlantic Division for the next 9 years. The Tkachuks will be colliding. It was quite a deal that went down. So the Calgary Flames get informed by Matthew Tkachuk. I guess you at least tip your cap to the fact, he gave them heads up that, his game plan was going to be moving on after next year and wanted to test the unrestricted free agency waters. And so that at least let Brad Treliving have an opportunity to get something for him. And boy, did he ever. I really thought he was going to be up against it, but he made a deal with the Florida Panthers, who immediately signed Tkachuk to an extension. But what a windfall they end up getting. Jonathan Huberdeau, the Flames receive. They also get Mackenzie Weegar. They get a prospect in Cole Schwindt and a 2025 conditional first-round draft pick, which is top 10 protected. And Panthers also get a fourth-rounder in that, along with Matthew Tkachuk. Let's get your opinion of the deal.
Oh, I think Calgary wins it in a landslide. I don't even think, Steve, that Calgary has to re-sign both of them. Obviously, if they do end up re-signing both of them, they really win it. But if they just can manage to sign Huberdeau, I think they win it. And I'm not trying to say that Huberdeau is a better player than Tkachuk. I'm not really comparing that Huberdeau directly with Tkachuk. I'm saying the fact that he was able to get a player of that quality, 100-point scorer, MVP conversation. And this is what, not only did you get him, but you got another guy in a damn good top four defenseman. And you got a prospect. Okay, he's 7th or 8th best prospect in Florida's system, but you got something else. Like, you would have thought it was going to be, a second rounder and a prospect and maybe a bottom 6 forward or something. But no, he gets a top flight guy and a top flight D and a prospect and a conditional first round pick. I think Calgary wins this trade in a landslide. No doubt about it.
It really is, in a way, kind of shifting this Tkachuk problem a year down the road, because you got the same issue now with Huberdeau and Weegar. At least, though, with both guys, you have a chance potentially. Whereas with Tkachuk, you knew you did not have a chance to re-sign this guy. But it will be interesting to see how the Flames behave, because if they go out and get a Nazem Kadri, you could make the argument this is a better hockey club than it was last year. So if that's the case, they're going to be in the playoff mix. They're not going to want to be selling off at the trade deadline if these guys decide not to re-sign. I think, the only way they can lose this is if both guys bail and they get nothing for them. That would mean Matthew Tkachuk was gone for 1 year of those guys, and that's not a very good return unless the Flames go on to win a Stanley Cup for the coming year.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, unless suddenly Jonathan Huberdeau and or Mackenzie Weegar decide they don't like Calgary either. But I mean, these are good Canadian boys. I think they will enjoy playing there, as opposed to Gaudreau and Tkachuk, who apparently, all I can think is they didn't enjoy playing in Canada or didn't like playing in Calgary. Maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the Canadian taxes. Gaudreau at least, Johnny Hockey, at least he released a statement through the Players Tribune there and kind of explained himself in an open letter to the fans of Calgary, which all those fans would have to pay for to read on that website, but that's besides the point. But at least there was some sort of an explanation there, a little mea culpa. I'm wondering, here's a question for you, Steve. Which guy do you think is more seen as a villain by the Calgary Flame fans? Like, does Johnny's little explanation kind of mitigate the circumstances around him? And it looks like it's Tkachuk who, like, flat out basically said, I don't want to play here. Which guy do you think is a bigger villain in Calgary?
Oof, that's a good question. I think it's Gaudreau, just because I think they had everything all set for him. He basically, because I didn't hear the numbers that were being thrown around at Tkachuk, because we're a year away from UFA, whereas Gaudreau is actually at UFA. And, they're very similar at the end of the day. But we knew for a fact that Gaudreau had been offered something like $12 million more than he got in Columbus. And I think that's probably why Gaudreau would be a little more annoying to Flames fans, because he left so much money on the table and he went to a team with absolutely no shot of winning. Whereas with Tkachuk, at least he's signing off on a deal with a true contender in the league.
I think it's Kachuk. I really do.
Do you?
I think that Gaudreau's sort of explanation will have some effect on people. Like he okay, he didn't exactly move right home down the street from family, but he's closer to family, and getting flights there is easier. He's closer that he can drive there. Doesn't have to cross a border to visit them. Like I get where he's coming from with wanting to be closer to family. I agree. Columbus is a little weird and not exactly, like I said, close as can be. I think, but Kachuk at least Kachuk came right out and said it. Like, oh, I'm not going to sign here. In other words, I don't want to be here. Johnny at least stuck in and negotiated and was thinking about it and was seriously considering it anyway, despite all those other things. I tend to believe him. I believe his emotional explanation, and I think Kachuk makes for the bigger villain. Plus, of course, who doesn't view Matthew Tkachuk as a villain anyway? There's 31 fan bases in the league that have hated him. Now this fan base in Calgary gets to understand what all those other teams felt like. He'll get it tougher because I think the type of game that he plays is going to make it easier for fans to root against him and boo him when he's in town.
Yeah, that I would agree with for sure. They're both villains when you get down to it, I think. And then whoever the bigger villain is, well, that's up for debate. Now, how about the defense now? Calgary's got Weegar, Tanev, Hannafin, Anderson, Shillington, Zadorov. Like, that's a pretty damn good top six, or not top six, your six defensemen. That's a pretty good lineup for Daryl Sutter to go to war with next season. That said, again, Weegar is in the final year of his contract. And if he wants to do the Claude Giroux thing, that's certainly an option. If he wants to come home and play for the Ottawa Senators, that's wide open to him. And it'd be interesting to see if he's maybe on the Sens' radar because he is a right shot defenseman. He is one of the better defensemen in the game, and he'll be looking for a new deal. If he wants to, he can make that deal happen sometime in the next 365 days.
Yeah, like that it makes me wonder now. Does Calgary actually has defensemen to move now? So is that a team that Ottawa should be talking to? Is a Hannafin a guy who could possibly be on the market there from Calgary? I don't know. It'll depend here in the next little while. We'll see if they sign Weegar or if Weegar chooses to sign. Otherwise, yeah, he's a guy to keep an eye on next year at the trade deadline. But if there's going to be a deal made now, like maybe it happens this summer, and maybe it's a Noel Hannafin.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty well-paid blue line as well. So I can't imagine that if Weegar is, the Flames fall deeply in love with Weegar and they want to re-sign him, they can't without moving some of those guys out. Maybe, as many as two, maybe more. I don't know. But Uyghur's going to get paid in this next contract. There's no doubt about that. So let's say this, because I thought when Connor Brown got traded for only a second rounder, I thought there was a big time issue, that something was coming down the pipe. Second rounder, it's not very much for Connor Brown, but I figured, okay, well, we'll cut Pierre Dorion some slack because, he might need money for something that's happening soon. And, well, tick-tock, we're now 2 weeks out, not quite 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks outside of the start of free agency, and still no top four defenseman here. And I got to thinking, what is the game plan for this team if they don't acquire another top four defenseman this summer? How do you think it plays out?
I don't know. Excuse me. I'm not too confident in either of JBD or Lassie Thompson being a top four. I think they both probably max out at a bottom pairing defenseman. So I'm not really sure. Is it Travis Hamonic then? He's in your top four, and Sanderson and Zub and Shabbat. Like, is that your top four? I'd really like to see it be better than that. Wouldn't we all like it to be stronger than that? Are they still talking? Are they still trying to get a free agent out of Dallas who might want to come here? Although the taxes would be a lot different to come from Texas taxes to Ontario taxes. Texas taxes. That was pretty good. Or is there a trade in the works? Are they talking to somebody? Or is it an offer sheet to a Noah Dobson? Do we throw that out there? I'm not sure. We'll have to wait and see, but I'm not confident in JBD or Lassie Thompson or really even in Travis Hamonic being in your top four. I'm not sure that that's the right way to go. What do you
I
think?
guess I think my first game plan, if I'm DJ Smith, and obviously in conference with Pierre Dorion, I think Hamonic would be my first go-to,
Oh yeah.
just because it wasn't that long ago he was considered one of the top defensemen in the league. If you go back 5 years, when the Islanders traded him to Calgary, like the Islanders got quite a bit for him. They got a first rounder and 2 second rounders. And guess who that first rounder ended up being? The aforementioned Noah Dobson, as everything comes full circle. But that's a guy who was not that long ago considered a really good defenseman, and he's not 41; he's 31. So there may be more there than we've seen in his time with Ottawa. And at the end of the season, when Pierre Dorion was talking about the season that was, he was thrilled with Hamonic in terms of the quality of character he had in the room. But he was quick to point out, he said, "Trust me, this guy was really hurt when he was playing in Ottawa." Like, so there's a very, if he has a good summer, gets healthy, good summer in the gym, maybe he can slide in there and potentially provide balance for either Shabbat or for Sanderson. The question, I guess, the lead up, the question to that would be, or the follow up question would be, will in fact Sanderson be ready for the top four role? We know he's going to be NHL ready, but he's a rookie at the end of the day, so it could be that maybe not on this team, but an ideal situation might be a 5-6 situation for the first few months. What do you think there?
No, I think this is a surefire, true quality NHL rookie. Like the first one that's been here in a while, who's going to step right in and play very well and be in the conversation for the Calder. I think this kid will be in there no problem. I think the question comes down to, well, I mean, by default or by design, it will be Travis Hamonic if nothing else happens. And I think from what DJ has said, you just reminded us here, from what DJ has said in the past, I think that the coaching staff at least is comfortable with it being Travis Hamonic. I don't have a problem with Sanderson. I think everybody's probably comfortable with him there as well. I just think that in a perfect world, um, Travis Hamonic would be better in a 5-6, like to up the quality of your players. You've upped the quality of your top six to the point that you're no longer discussing whether it's a Connor Brown or whether it's a Alex Formenton who's going to be in your top six. You don't even have that conversation anymore because you've got a true top six. Look out. I'd like to see them have a true, wow, there's top four. There's no question about it. These guys belong there. And I think that's the last step here that needs to happen. I've been wondering if maybe Pierre had a couple, I'm sure he's had conversations with free agents and with teams for trade. I'm sure he's had those conversations. I wonder if some of those things are hingent or dependent on those teams signing people and what happens with their salary cap situation after that, right? Like if the Islanders go out and get themselves, if the Islanders go out and get themselves Nazem Kadri, what does that do to their situation and their cap situation? And maybe then you can make something happen with the Islanders as far as getting a defenseman. If Dallas doesn't come up with the money or can't make something happen or to sign, help me out. What's a defenseman in
John
Dallas?
Klingberg?
Right. If they can't sign Klingberg, who do they sign, and what does that do to their cap situation? And if Klingberg, you give him a couple of weeks, or in this case, it's almost a month now to go find somewhere to go, and maybe he circles back around again and talks to Ottawa. I just think that there's a little bit of patience here being shown by the Senators, and it's probably not just because Pierre can't get anything done. It's because other shoes need to drop in other markets until such time as then he can move in and say, all right, now let's talk. That's just my sort of theory on the situation.
Yeah, and right now with free agency, it's tough because you got John Klingberg still sitting there, and he's got lots of options, I'm sure, but it gets thin really quickly after that. As far as the free agent pool, it's not.
Oh, you got PK.
Yeah, I was just going to say that PK Subban he might be the best right shot defenseman after Klingberg that's left, and that's not ideal. I don't think anybody's thinking that he's a top four solution, and he certainly. He still certainly takes up the oxygen of a number one defenseman, but I don't think he could be in your top four at this stage of the game. So, you mentioned Noah Dobson.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he's really an offer sheet candidate?
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to structure it properly, right? The whole problem with this offer sheet stuff is you want to structure it in a way that it doesn't screw up your payroll and in a way that you're not giving up too much to get the guy. But to do that, you almost make it too easy for a team to match, which is why I throw out the idea of the Islanders being interested in Nazem Kadri, and then you get a look at what their payroll structure looks like, and then maybe you can swoop in and make an offer. You know what I'm saying? You get a better handle on what the Islanders are up to and what their cap's at, and then you can kind of tailor your offer to Dobson around that. But then this whole idea of offer sheets, they happen so rarely. It seems that when they do happen, it's got more to do with people being vindictive than it has to do with trying to build a hockey club. But I don't know how Pierre Dorion feels about them. He's never really been involved with one, so we've never really seen how he would handle it. I don't. Yeah, I can bet you Lou Lamoriello, being as old school as he is, he's probably not a fan of them. But he's probably also wouldn't be. He's a very big guy on loyalty and following the club rules and being a part of the program and all that sort of stuff. That I could see him just saying, screw you. If somebody signs one of his guys to an offer sheet, he'd say, well, you obviously don't want to be here, screw you, and not matching. I could see that being part of it too. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah. Hockey has so many unwritten rules. You think about the game itself, like, the whistle goes and the guy's coming down the wing and it was offside. And so everybody lets up for a second and the guy, fires it into an empty net. If you don't know hockey, you'd probably say, well, so. But if you know hockey, you'd know that could potentially start a bench clearing brawl if somebody did that. There's all these little unwritten rules in the sport of hockey. And just based on how few offer sheets there should be more. And I got to think that it's like part of the GM's code that you don't do that to other GMs. And if you do, whoever you do it to, whatever GM you did it to, he will blackball you. And his inner circle of GM friends, he'll be sure that they blackball you as well. I think that that's what it comes down to because, for example, let's use Dobson as our case study here. When you look at the compensations that exist right now, I mean, as long as you're not going over $8.4 million with your offer sheet, like your compensation that you'd be giving up for signing a guy to an offer sheet, it's not that much as long as you don't go above 8.4 million, because between 6.3 and 8.4, you would owe the team that loses the player you signed a first rounder, a second rounder, and a third rounder. That's not that expensive for a guy, an emerging star in the league like Noah Dobson, who is north of 50 points this year and still so young. He might be interested in signing an $8.4 million deal, and Lou Lamoriello might be interested in not signing him to an $8.4 million deal.
Exactly.